I'm State Representative Gary Day of the 187th District in Berks and Lehigh counties. Joining me today on the program is State Representative Fred Keller from the 85th District in Snyder and Union counties. Our Commonwealth is very diverse from end to end, and there's many different members, and we all represent different districts. And it's important to me that I share with the people in my district some ideas, thoughts from other parts of the Commonwealth to show what I deal with as a state representative representing the 187th District. Welcome to the program, Fred. How are you?
I'm doing really well, and thank you for having me today.
So this is your first year in the legislature, and what did you think? Have you any particular things that you found exciting being a new state representative?
Actually, coming to the close of the 1 year, since our term does begin on December 1, the thing I look at and I find most rewarding about the position is all the people that you get to come in contact with, especially in our districts, but also in Harrisburg, that really have the best interest of the Commonwealth and their districts at heart here in Harrisburg, making sure that we move a positive agenda forward for Harrisburg and Pennsylvania. That's
great. Now, one of the things I wanted to do is talk to you a little bit about who is Fred Keller and where did you come from? What's your background and experience? I think it's very important for the viewers to know in our districts that it is a very diverse legislature. So tell us a little bit about your background in private sector or public sector.
Well, actually, talking about the diversity of the state with the 203 representatives, and we all are very diverse. My background, quite frankly, is really what our government's about. A citizen, coming to be elected to the state legislature to represent our respective district. And my background is private sector wood products manufacturing. And, I started 25 years ago, actually 26 years ago now. I worked for a company for 25 years. Started working in a factory, held various positions throughout my time with the company. It's Conestoga Wood Specialties, headquartered in Lancaster County, but the factory I worked in was in Snyder County. And, worked my way up through and had several different positions. And for the last 11 years I was with the company, I managed their factory in Snyder County, which is quite frankly, a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility that employs currently probably almost 200 people.
200 people. My, that's a pretty big operation you have going there. Now, you worked your way up in that organization, working different types of jobs and anything like that. What do you find that you learned in the private sector that helps you most as a state representative?
Well, the one thing I've learned is when you're talking to people, no matter whether you're a representative or you're working in private industry or you're working back home in any kind of volunteer organization, people care very deeply about what they're doing, about their fellow citizens. And looking at that, people are very smart too. I think sometimes people aren't given enough credit for what they can understand and really how involved they want to be in the decision-making process. And I've really found that, being that I worked in the factory on running a machine and then worked my way up to leadership within the company and now leadership within my area, being the fact that I was elected as representative, it's really rewarding, listening to what the people have to say, and that's really what it's all about for us.
So that's both in your job there in the private sector as well as a state representative as well, right?
Right. That's it. One message I would like to get across to people is that I value your opinions. A lot of times, you have the solutions. You can help us find those solutions. All we need to do is listen, because people are very smart. They're very knowledgeable, and if we work together, we will definitely do what's right for Pennsylvania.
Right, and I share those values as well in the operation of my district seat in the 187th, and I always urge people to contact my office through all the different media, whether it's traditional telephone or regular mail or email or going on to our website, and you have all those abilities to contact you as well. Is that correct?
That's correct, and our district is particularly rural. In fact, I have a large county and then part of another county, and we have a lot of people that don't have computer access, believe it or not. There's a lot to do, and we get emails and they sign up for email updates. Right. But you talk to people and I say, well, you can get me on the web, and they'll say, well, I don't have a computer, Fred, or I don't have the internet, or just different things. And it's really nice, and I like the personal contact. I know people might say, well, that's sort of old-fashioned, but I think there's some things that you can gather by looking somebody in the eye and having that conversation one-to-one sometimes, or face-to-face.
Right. I often believe that some people think, once I'm elected, the people have elected me and I'll make all the decisions, and you operate more the way I do, where we want to hear input. I always say it makes me a better state representative to hear input from everybody in the district. So I'm happy and encouraged to hear that we're very similar in that we represent our districts that way.
Well, one thing, if I can add to that, Gary,
Sure.
and you're talking about you and I doing that, but coming to Harrisburg and running into a bunch of other people that have been elected from their respective districts. A lot of people in the state house here do that.
Right.
I found that is one thing. Sometimes you hear stories of how they changed when they got in there, and different things. I don't think that's the case for a lot of places throughout the Commonwealth. And one thing I tell my constituents, I'm the same person. I prefer if people call me Fred. I go to places and they say Representative Keller or Mr. Keller.
Right.
I said, just call me Fred. I said, I was Fred before, I'm Fred now, and 10 years from now I'll be Fred, and that's how I like doing things. Because
all right. Now the other thing I want to ask you is, you're in the private sector. How did you make the jump to say, I want to be the next state representative in my district? Because I always find this fascinating with our colleagues to find out what was that made you make the switch and say, I'd like to become the state representative.
Well, there's a couple things. I've always been interested in politics since 1980, when Ronald Reagan first ran for president. That's the first campaign that I can remember, and he was the first president I could vote for 4 years later. But I've always been activist when I found what I felt was a good person to serve the public, to work on their campaigns.
Oh, okay.
And I had the very good fortune of the fellow that was in the seat before me, Russ Fairchild. And what a great gentleman. And I don't think we could have asked for anybody to do any better job than Russ did representing our district. And when he retired, in fact, I had gotten a few phone calls saying, hey, Fred, did you think about running? I was talking to somebody and your name came up. And I hung up the phone, and a little while later I got another call. And so to me that was pretty gratifying, that there was people that had enough trust in Fred to say, hey, we believe in you. We think that you do a good job. And I take that very seriously when I come to represent the people's seat in Union and Snyder counties.
Now, you talked about your predecessor, Russ Fairchild. He was in office many, many years.
22.
And I remember when I was in the private sector, I came out here and he was on a particular committee, and I had to go talk to him. And actually I was on the private side, so I was lobbying our issue and talking about our issue. And what an outstanding man to deal with as a private sector person coming in contact with the legislature. And then having met you now coming in, and I served with Russ as well, and I really appreciate it. I think you are upholding the ideals that Russ has set in place for that district and the expectations, and I think you're doing a great job. Just want to share that with you as another member who's working with you.
I appreciate that. And again, I can remember the first time I met Russ. It was 20-some years ago, and when he was first seeking office. And I met him then, and ran into him in the district from time to time, and he always had the time to listen to what you had to say. Wasn't a man of a lot of words, or he just would think about it. But when Russ had something to say, he had put a lot of consideration and thought into it.
Right.
And that's really, I think, what our government needs to do. Russ has done it. I think that our citizens expect that. Listen to what they have to say, then let's debate the issues, review the facts, and make a decision.
Right. I think that's great. Now, we were talking a little bit earlier, and you talked about your district. You've come across quite a few constituents who don't have electronic computers to have email contact with your office. Do you find other ways to do that outreach? Because we have kind of a burden for us to do outreach, to get out to the people. Do you find that town halls or something, or a newsletter, or what are the outreach efforts that you do in order to help let people know, hey, I'm your state representative and here's the mechanism to contact me? What do you find is your favorite way to reach out to people?
Actually, I'm glad you asked that, because there's a question I ask a lot of people when I'm in the district. We can have town hall meetings, which we've had several of those. We've also had the dairy princess come in and have a cheese break. You know, it was just a fun event that we had, and she had asked for a little bit of help, and we said, yeah, they did all the work. All we had to do was invite people. So that was a lot of fun. But, you know, I talked to people, I said, how do you prefer me to do this job? And a lot of people said, we just like you coming to our events. So I spend a lot of time at school sporting events, at concerts, at you know, church events, Eagle Scout events, you know, just anything that's going on in the district, we can be there. And the way I like to phrase our team and how we represent, have structured the representation for the 85th District is we're the 85th District team. It consists of the people that work in the district office and myself. And, you know, they really do a very good job, because when you're talking to one of the people that work in the office, you're in essence talking to me, because we debate the issues and we talk about things.
Right.
And that's how we develop, you know, what we come down to Harrisburg to work on.
And I'll share with you in my office as well. That's what I do in my office. We're a team, and when someone comes in there, I tell people many times we're spending half or more of our week in Harrisburg. And when I'm not there, these people are surrogates for us, where they're receiving the information. They're not voting on things or making decisions on policy, but they're surrogates to receive information. And I always say, so many people call them and say, just tell them to get back to me. And I have a form that says, you know, what would you like State Representative Gary Day to do for you, so that we can always boil it down to what is the issue. And many times, I think viewers should know in both of our districts, they should know that when we're in Harrisburg and they come in on a Monday, sometimes our staff can start putting together the information that's requested that we need to help give them an answer or make a decision. So I think that's vital that you look at it that way as well, with the team approach. And it's vital that viewers know when they're talking to somebody in our offices, they're talking to us. That I go back, sit down with those sheets of paper, we stack them up when I get there, or we'll talk about them over the phone, and we go through them, and we go through each of the issues and decide what we're going to do. So I think that's a great system that you have. And you also mentioned about events being everywhere. Do you have any stories about I have a ton of stories where someone came up to me and pulled any particular issues that you've gathered through those events. Like I have property tax relief. Everybody always grabs me by the elbow. Usually they're older ladies who are shorter than I am, and they pull me down with them, and my ear's down there, and then they whisper in my ear, "You got to do something about this or that." But do you have any particular anecdotes?
Well, I have a funny one. I don't know how appropriate it is, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's just I think it's just cute. And every couple of months I go out to a local market that has a few tables, and you know the local residents there get together before they go to work for coffee, and it's about 6 o'clock in the morning. And every couple of months I go out, and we were talking about the texting, you know, the texting bill, and you know the one fella says, "Fred, you really need to do something about this." He said, "I was on my way into Mifflinburg." He said, "I was going down Route 45, and I said, I was following this young kid on their way to school. And I could tell they were texting, they were on the brakes, they were weaving, everything else." And he said, "I spilled 2 beers on my way into Mifflinburg." And I just think that's just a funny little, you know, he was serious, but it's just, he just tried to put a little bit of humor to it. And, you know, if you can't sometimes laugh at some of the things, you know, it sort of, you know, that sort of puts the human side to things.
Well, and hopefully he was joking about that.
Oh, he was. He was.
I just sent out an email that talked about rules, you know, to remember for driving in winter conditions, and one of them is, of course, drinking and driving. That you don't do that. So what a great anecdote, though, for somebody pulling your leg a little bit and making a joke.
It's just that we're fun. And I'm not advocating for people drinking and driving, but his point was drinking and driving is illegal, but yet you can be, you know, you can have somebody that's doing something that's not even looking at the road.
That's right.
And so I think that was his point more so than saying that would actually happen.
Now, one of the things that puts us on display for rapid fire question and answer is a town hall meeting. Have you had a chance to do those in your district? Do you do those that format or any type of events like that? Do you get a chance to do those?
Absolutely. We actually did a couple town halls before the budget, because I felt that, you know, when you got an issue that's that important, you need to put it out there. I need to be able to stand in front of my constituents, be able to look them in the eye and say, and I will do this on any vote I take.
Right.
Look them in the eye and say, this is what the issue is. Here's the facts. Here's the decision I made. I listened to the input, and this is why I did it.
That's great.
Because the people deserve that respect.
Right. I've found that that each constituent has a particular way they like to interact with me, either with a direct email, or a lot of people like to come to town hall meetings, and some people don't ask a question, but they always are there. And what I found out is they like to hear what's on their neighbors' minds and hear what the answers are to help them run up the learning curve of what's going on in the Commonwealth. So many different things that we have for outreach into the community, and I think it's one of the most important things that we do. We have a constituent service base that we do out of our offices, and also we're voting on legislation. And as a matter of fact, we're going to take a quick break right now, and I appreciate Representative Keller for being on the program today and having the ability to talk a little bit about his background as well as mine and how we came to the legislature. And when we come back from our break, we will start to talk about a couple of the issues that are going on in Harrisburg, and you'll have a chance to see what maybe there are some differences. Maybe we're exactly alike on everything. But we're going to take our break right now, and we'll return in a moment.
Did you know that Fort Indiantown Gap, located in Lebanon County, is home to Pennsylvania's only Veterans Memorial? C.J. Frederick of Westchester, Bucks County, submitted the winning design that now honors those men and women who have sacrificed their lives in defending this great country. Dedicated to the Commonwealth on October 7, 2001, the Veterans Memorial is surrounded by freestanding walls and houses an amphitheater, which can accommodate large crowds during an event. Strategically placed in the front of the amphitheater is a tomb that reminds visitors of those who gave their lives protecting the freedoms of this nation. The design suggests a war-damaged structure in which Frederick wanted to impress upon those visiting the horrific arena of war. Now you know.
Did you know that the state capitol is not only the epicenter of the Commonwealth's governing bodies, but was once home to 390 preserved Civil War flags? During the war, it was customary for each state to furnish their regiments in battle with flags representing their contribution to the Union Army. After the war, Pennsylvania's military department was responsible for collecting the flags, and in 1872 they were reverently housed in the Capitol. Following the completion of construction on the new Capitol building in 1914, the Civil War flags were moved to the Capitol Rotunda. They were kept untouched in custom-made flag cases until 1982, when the Capitol Preservation Committee initiated its Save the Flags project. Throughout the years, dust and long-term vertical display of the flags had begun to devastate the brittle silk fabric and painted designs. The flags were removed by local textile conservators and were repaired and preserved in storage units that protect the relics from light, dust, and excessive handling. Now you know.
Welcome back to the program. I'm State Representative Gary Day. My guest today is colleague Representative Fred Keller from Snyder and Union counties. Fred, thanks for being on the program today.
Again, it's my pleasure. I like every opportunity to sort of showcase what we do in the 85th District and let the rest of the Commonwealth know what great residents live in central Pennsylvania.
Well, and I appreciate that, and I like to do that in my district as well. One of the things I'm trying to accomplish with this program is to, let people in my district see views from outside the district. They hear from me all the time, they see me, and they ask me questions, give me their input, but I'm trying to deliver the message into my district about the diversity across the Commonwealth. Now, our districts are probably very similar in ideology and the way the people think, so maybe in this particular program we'll be very close on a lot of the issues. But I wanted to bring up, I tell people that what we do in Harrisburg is very important because it affects lives. It affects people's lives, whether it's in business or regulating a business that they work for or own, or whether it's regulating or making sure that a product or service that is delivered to them is proper and effective. And I think both you and I share that that interference is a minimal interference, the minimum level, and not to over-regulate or anything like that. Do you want to just touch briefly on your basic view of state government and intervention as far as, I know we've had some conversations about this on the floor and after committee meetings. Can you talk a little bit about your ideas about just generally
scope of government
regulation?
Scope of government, role of government.
Right.
Here again, government has a responsibility, one, to make sure things are safe for the citizens. Also to create an environment where the citizens can make decisions and make choices and live their lives productively and earn a good living. And really that's, I was at a meeting one time and we were talking about some different things, and I was in a group and we were talking about, somebody said, well, I wish that we just had enough money, and if I had it, I would just buy everybody health care. I said, you know, I appreciate the sentiment on that. But the truth of the matter is we should create an environment where the people can go earn a living and purchase the kind of health care they would choose to purchase. Because anything that a person works for, earns, there's a sense of pride.
Right.
And I tell you what, Pennsylvania has a rich heritage of our residents being very proud of how hard they've worked. And a lot of what happened in Pennsylvania, of course, you know, it was examples for the rest of the country when our nation was young. So very hardworking tradition in Pennsylvania. And the company that I worked for, you know, invested in Pennsylvania because they were from Pennsylvania, but they realized the value of the hard work of the citizens of this Commonwealth.
Well, and I agree with you 100%. Trying to unleash that, I think, is one of the most important things. When government comes in and tries to create a market, I think it's in a box. I remember it when I was in college, I took an economics course that talked about a bird in a cage, and that was the communist or socialism model. And then what they were saying was you always hold that bird back from full extension of its wings in full flight. And I think you hit the nail on the head that the Pennsylvania residents are very resourceful and very proud of the work, you know, of working for what they get.
You know, just saying that, I can remember when I was in business, and with the business I was in, we toured many different factories throughout the United States. You know, I've been to places as far as Maine, down to Georgia, and out to Michigan and Wisconsin, and I've been into Canada. And not just woodworking factories, but you know, you go into anything. They make glass, they make airplanes, they make boats, they make anything you can think of. And I'd look at the people working, and then I would come back home and walk into the factory and look at how hard that the people work here. And there isn't anybody that is any smarter or works any harder than the residents of this Commonwealth. I don't care if it's the company I worked for or a company in your district. These people really know what it is to work hard and be proud of what they accomplish.
Well, now let's get into some of the legislative things that are going on in Harrisburg. What has been, you know, the piece of legislation, we get all types of ideas that come before us in the form of memos from our colleagues, and then it makes its way through the process as a bill. What has been the piece of legislation that you've found to be one of the most, having the most impact in your district?
If we're talking about legislation that I've introduced, and there's a couple pieces that I have, there's two in particular that I'd like to talk about. One is prevailing wage, that will not only help taxpayers and citizens in my district, but throughout the entire Commonwealth. And it deals with the threshold at which governmental entities need to bid jobs on what we call prevailing wage.
Right.
And the prevailing wage is typically not the wage that's paid in our rural counties.
A prevailing wage, just to kind of give a definition of the, I'll make a general one, you can make it more specific if you like, but a prevailing wage is the wage that is required on public sector projects to be paid to workers, and that's quite higher than what the market is currently. Is that a fair assumption, definition?
I would say, yeah, if you're looking at saying what the prevailing wage is in our area, yes, that would be much higher. Roofing, and it's funny, the building that our district office is in just had somebody in, and I think roofing was $57 an hour.
Wow.
With benefits.
And in your district, that job might be more, I mean, a good paying job, even in the 20s is much less.
It might be $18 an hour or 16. You know, I hate to comment on that because I'm not a roofing expert. I've done that in the past, but that was many years ago.
Well, and to give the people as much information as possible, what is the second piece of legislation that you wanted to talk about?
That was actually an idea that came from one of our municipalities in Union County, where the Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary is, and it deals with Act 101 recycling. And any municipality based upon population or population density, when they reach a certain level, needs to go to mandatory recycling. Well, the Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary is approximately one third of the population of that township. So they went over 5,000 residents. Well, 1,800 of those reside in Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary, which already has a facility-wide recycling program. So that township would be forced to buy the equipment, hire the labor, and pay all the associated costs to collect recyclables on a mandatory, the curbside recycling, and not reap the benefits to cover the costs that they have to incur. So my legislation says if you have a state or federal institution in a municipality that pushes you above that limit of 5,000 of your population density, they should be excluded from the numbers counted in the census for that. Because here again, it's one of these things where the facility already has the recycling program in place. If the facility doesn't have the recycling program, then maybe you do it. But here in a federal institution, they're already doing those things.
And those are great ideas and great pieces of legislation that you're advocating for and that would be important in your district. We talked about it earlier. I'll give you one more chance to give a pitch to the people in your district. You've just laid out two great ideas, and I would assume that you want to have feedback from people in your district. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I would say you don't always wait till I come to your area, because you may not think about it when I'm there.
Right.
But while it's on your mind, either write a letter, make a phone call, send me an email. Any method. Most everybody in Union and Snyder counties has my phone number, my cell phone number, because I hand it out to anybody that asks, as I should.
Sure.
Being a public servant, I think we need to be available. But anytime anybody can send me, and it really helps when you have an issue, if you can relate it back to a personal experience you've had. Because when we come down to talk, and I want to talk to you, Gary, about a piece of legislation, I say, hey, Gary, I'd like to talk to you about, I want to introduce this bill about recycling, Act 101. Can you really support me on this? And if I don't have that personal experience to put with it, it sort of helps me gain support and momentum for what really needs to happen here in Harrisburg, to make sure that we can understand and sort of touch and feel all the issues that are impacting our constituents.
You know what? That's all the time we have for the program today, and I want to thank you for being here with me today. I thought it was very important for me to, in my outreach in my district, to share with people other people's view from other representatives across the Commonwealth. So that's what I'm trying to do. And hopefully if people in your district see this program as well, they know that they can contact you. I always like to say that if you need assistance with any state matter, feel free to contact me at my office through the same way that you just outlined, or my website, or really any way to contact me in my office and Representative Keller. That information will be on the screen in a moment. You'll be able to see that. I'd like to thank everybody for watching. I'd like to thank Representative Keller for joining me today. And please join me next time for Legislative Report.